really liking that music. The more we use it.
Yeah, I need you to draw out the time though. I think it should run because I got to tell you
Well, hang on because I know we're gonna get into a 30-minute conversation based
tangent
on this.
tangent.
So welcome again to Lawfully Chaotic. Thank you for joining us, my co-host Jason Baldrick and myself, Brian Weiss. We have a guest tonight, Brian Gomez, the bearded nerd. Thank you for joining us, Brian. Good. Thank you.
Going well.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So what were you going to say about the? Yes, I have all the pieces parts. I just haven't had time to put it together. But like a 2.5 minute, yeah.
Cool. No, that's all.
Okay.
That's it.
Cool.
That's all I had.
All right, that was it. Okay, well, thanks for joining us tonight.
Oh my god, and it's allergy season too. It's driving me.
Dude, okay, we might as well start with that because So it's still 40 fucking degrees here in Chicago, and
That's
yet
crazy.
my allergies are already in full swing and the mosquitoes are already out. Can somebody explain that to me, please?
Yes, we call that climate change, friend, and you're all gonna die. So that all of us aliens on the other planets can come and terrestrially transform your planet into a place for us.
God, it's just it drives me nuts.
Man,
I still got my winter coat on in practically May, and yet
Winter coat? Are you talking about back hair?
No, I don't have any back hair. I don't have any chest hair. I'm smooth. Yeah, I'm smooth, yo. Anybody have any announcements? I don't think
cannot unsee a naked mole rat that looks like Brian now.
gross. Yeah, no thanks.
I don't think I have any announcements this week. Jason, you got any announcements?
We're going to the Ren Fair on Sunday. I'm going to experiment with maybe broadcasting on my Twitch channel just for giggles and fun.
Dude, that's cool. Do it.
Supposedly you can, run it all through your mobile app and mobile phone and all that. The only problem is sometimes the nodes and the infrastructure gets very kind of overdone in congested areas like that. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Well,
but
it'd be a
Debtor's
good
Gambit is on hiatus. We're officially on our summer hiatus, and
Nice.
Vince's game will be kicking off, I believe, in June.
Cool. I need to create a character for that, assuming he wants me in the campaign.
Yeah. Oh, of course he will.
Oh, that's right. We talked about that. I'm
yeah,
going to
yeah.
kind of hop in and out. I'm going to flit in and out.
That,
I got an
that
idea
way
for
it
a
can
character.
match your travel season.
Yeah.
I officially opened up my 6th pay-to-play table.
Nice.
And
Nice.
my very first pay-to-play table, I do that every time, is just celebrated our 40th session.
Nice.
So it's been, now I get to take a little breather, 2 months of stability and creation and writing. And if by June, like end of June, I can figure it out, I want to put together a campaign called Anthology. And there'll be campaigns that run in 4 parts, and each anthology will take place in each of the major cities within Exandria. So the very first one's going to be Drusar, the next one's going to be Vasselheim, the next one's going to be Amman, the one after that will be Nicodranus, and the idea is to kind of create, I don't know if you remember the show, but there was a show back in the 90s called Way of the Gun, where it was a story of a gun that went through family after family after family, and each family that owned the gun, there was like a story about them. And then it eventually turned into the movie with, I can't remember his name, but so that's my plan. Other than our normal Monday night Pike's Promise and Tuesday night Denizens and their Masters, which I kind of feel like we're in the finality of the arc. It's quite possible that one could end up wrapping up by the end of summer. I mean, they're level 17. So there's only so many milestones left. There's also only so many challenges left that could possibly cause, concern about not finishing the campaign.
Right.
But now that we're in the final arc, I now have 3 endings available. And depending on how they make their choices, one of the 3 will play out. So
you don't have a lot going on lately.
No, I'm very slow right now.
Okay, good.
Oh, wait. That may sound bad when I say I'm slow. I'm not slow.
Brian, you have any announcements you'd like to make?
I'm trying to think.
Don't think. Don't do that.
That's problem number
Thursday
one.
night, you're amongst friends. It's okay.
Well, I have my Patreon that I launched recently, and that's been good. That's been fun. It's really focused on just helping DMs really level up their skills, and even players who want to learn how to DM. So that's been fun. We have some podcasts. Brian, you were on the podcast, not this past week, but the week prior. That was really fun. Talked about a lot of the nostalgia of D&D and how we got into it. We really went on a tangent on Reaper minis too. Not gonna lie,
we did. It was a fun conversation.
I love tangents are fun.
That we should, I should rename this show Tangential
chaotic tangents
or something. Chaotic Tangents, yeah. And you and I are working on something together.
Yes, we are. We're working on
some content releases.
Together.
Yeah,
we're working on a couple of things that is going to really help players get their character. It's going to really streamline that character development, right? Because every time you look at like the player's handbook and you roll a D6 or what is it, a D8 for flaws and ideals and stuff like that, this is really going to focus on building out your character so that if you have a paragraph of backstory or more, it's actually useful. And it's actually just not you pulling stuff out of, the air. It's actually things that your dungeon master they could choose to use it against you, or they can choose to use it to build up your story. And it's really good stuff. We're also working on a couple of other fun things that I really can't wait to share and talk about. Again, everything to help you as a dungeon master, because y'all, we spend a lot of time prepping, and I just feel like if you're spending all this time prepping, how long are you actually taking to enjoy the game and be with your friends and be present?
That's an interesting point, because Ginny D just did a really interesting release on YouTube in regards to the advice of don't over prep.
Quote, over prepping is bullshit.
For her, well, I liked her take on it, because it's hard to talk about when advice is good and bad, and she's upfront. She's like, she feels like over prepping is just bad advice. It's you if you give the advice out that you're over prepping, you better have a lot of context around it as to why you think you got to be cautious about it. But I liked her disposition. I liked the way she very methodically plotted out through the the whole over prep kind of conversation and stuff like that. I miss discourse. I miss that kind of discourse. Me and Brian do it all the time, and
that's why we do this.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so interesting.
I don't disagree. I think also we utilize the wrong terms. Like, what do you mean by over prep? That's my first question. When I've had Patreons and folks come to me on on Instagram and message me, they've talked to me, oh, Brian, I think I've been over prepping and I want to spend less time doing that. Well, what do you consider over prepping? Well, I've been working on this one session. Bingo. You're prepping for a session when what's going to happen, and this happened to one individual, they were prepping a session. The players went a completely different route, and they felt that they had to improv everything. Versus if you prep for scenarios and you lay that foundation down, like in my homebrew world, the foundation is completely ready, set, go. Actually, open invite for y'all if you two want to ever jump in a game or whatnot. But
so does that mean you follow the RPG stack method, that you make it so people can come and go more freely?
Absolutely.
That's cool. I'm starting. I've got a guy in my Discord server, Ian, very young kid, very smart, very bright. He's been playing that method now for a year and a half. And there's a steady group of 6 to 8 people that come and go. Like, he'll get the same person for 8 sessions, and then suddenly they leave for a few months and come back. And he just does this amazing way of handling it. And I listen in all the time, and it's kind of what my inspiration was for doing like the anthology thing, was to make it easier for people to come and go, and make it easier for people to join a more short-term environment. But I actually, because it was a new term I heard from one of the other pro DMs, I just was super excited that you're using it. That's awesome.
What's the term?
RPG stack.
Gotcha. Yeah, I really like that because I'm all about continuity of the story. As I know you guys are. And it's tough when to have characters come and go. So that's something that I always keep in mind, and that's a good way to prep too, in my opinion, is to prep for those scenarios.
It works,
and
man.
It does. And I've had a couple instances where players have come and gone, or even, it applies also if somebody wants to change characters instead of saying, oh, you've been traveling around with a mage and now all of a sudden he's a paladin. You know what I mean?
See, because sorry.
You do the same thing where, he leaves and a new character comes in. And I've actually ended up with, inadvertently, I am very, the way I DM, and I think you guys know this, is I kind of have an idea of the overarching story. And I'm talking about homebrew. I have an idea of the overarching story, but I kind of write as I go.
Same.
And I use that as, I use a couple groups to kind of write the story with me, if you will. And it's really kind of cool because it allows for, to your point of prepping for scenarios rather than a session. It really allows for some cool narrative. I've had some really interesting ongoing side arcs with characters that left and then either came back or didn't. So,
well, I've had groups that affected the world. So currently, a group that ended their play in 2020. They, because of their actions, it has affected the world, and my in-person group, they're dealing with that. And another
so your previous group is now canon, so that 2020 group is canon.
That's awesome.
I love that. Canon. I love that creativity. I think that's exactly what this game inspires. I love it.
That is very cool.
If you were to be in my game, even if it was only for a couple of sessions, your characters would be canon. That's just how I roll. That's how I play it, and it's a very West Marcia style game as well. Where I do like how characters influence the world and how everything happens. I will say, shout out to Ray, aka GotDM. When he I thought I was doing this for 5-6 years now. I thought I was like, okay, this is cool, I'm doing this. But when Ray invited me into his game, man, he had been doing this type of game for 28 years, where it was that RPG stack where players come and go, to the point where a player that started out when 28 years ago as the first dwarf of the world is now back playing that same character.
Well, that's like cool. The D&D the game, or the game D&D.
The game D&D.
That's been running for 20, 30 years. And
they just hit their 40th year.
40th year.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's pretty cool. For those of you that don't know what that is, it's an ongoing D&D game. One game that's been going on for 40 years.
Yep.
And when you're in, you're in. And if your character dies, you're done. And you can't come back as another character. So it's literally like, if you die, you're gone.
And they're playing second edition, I believe.
Are they really?
Yeah, second edition is a lot more forgiving for campaign styles like that. So it makes a little bit more sense. It's like when I sit, every now and then I follow a lot of Twitch channels. So every now and then I pop into Lord Gasumba just to kind of see where they're at in their world, and kind of see how modern players are playing old rules. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's an interesting way to kind of look back on how we all approach things, right? Because there's very, very few generational games. And I know me and Brian have talked about this in the past, but I can't think of anything other than like professional sports that are generational games, versus the idea that you have generations of people playing this game. And I mean, we always joke about loading up our gremlin with our suitcases of books and miniatures, and now we can do everything on a tablet. You know, so it's like, it's such an interesting way now to look at first edition, second edition. I don't really view 3.5 as anything other than its kind of own, kind of like contained D20 reality. And then of course, fourth edition, which I was never a fan of the mechanics, but I felt it was the greatest exercise of lore for the game in general. The amount of writing that went on for fourth edition was just phenomenal. And then now we have our new fifth edition approach, which I'm hoping this is a good segue into. I could see you're about ready to share that Spelljammer tab. Boy, do I have a lot of criticisms about this.
Well, this is actually Brian wanted to talk about this when I asked him if he would join us. Awesome. So yeah, it is a good segue. So we have coming out Spelljammer August 16th.
Yep.
Which is pretty exciting, whether or not, I mean, arguably it's exciting whether or not you think it's a good idea or not. How about, let's start with you since apparently...
Were you talking about Spelljammer? I fell asleep there.
Yeah, exactly. So let's start with you since apparently you already fucking hate it. So have at it, Jay.
No, you know what? And I can't wait to hear Brian's take on this. And, hey, I'm a big fan of GURPS.
I want you guys to go first because I haven't fully. Actually, maybe I should go first because I haven't fully developed an opinion yet. So mine's going to be quick. So let me go first because I don't want my views affected by both of you because I have a feeling we have a positive and a negative view here.
Possibly. Go ahead and start. Yeah, you start.
Okay. All I'm going to say is I think it is a really cool idea for D&D to open up the potential of how to play this game. I mean, without going into a huge conversation, I think it could be somewhat argued that D&D can get stale after all these years. So I think in that regard, I think it's very cool. And I'm undecided because. And I know, Jason, you and you have views on this too. That you can adapt the D&D rules to any genre.
I could literally take 5e and treat it like GURPS and run it to any theme that you can think of.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, I guess my view is I'll see it when I believe it on how well of a job they do, and if it feels like a layer on top of D&D, or if it feels like a true extension of what we have and a tie-in. So I'm going to say that I am still undecided, leaning towards excited for this. So go.
So my first reality check on this is quite simple. If your content teams are so fucking bored and lazy that this is the best they can do in 2 years of COVID, you better kind of like reassess what your focus is. Now, with that being said, an uplifted, very pretty 64-page book that's a complete rehash of the original core content and its intent as a theme is pretty cool, right? I mean, it's got some great new art. It's got some great kind of like uplifting and newness to it. But this goes to the problem I have with WotC and the kind of visionary statement that they lack. It's like the reason why Exandria and Critical Role is so popular is it's all new and you get hundreds of pages of opportunity to create a lot of unique situations.
Yeah. Hey, Enigma, thanks for joining us, by the way.
Yeah. And he's a young dude who likes old shit. So, he'll love this. And me and him, we go back and forth on topics all the time because he runs a very amazing homebrew game on Tuesday afternoons called Titans Revival, which is, I listen in all the time. And luckily he allows me to curate it. So I do get to kind of enjoy it after the fact. But fundamentally, this is where I have concerns that for a while there, we were getting a lot of fresh content. Yeah. We were getting Strixhaven. We were getting, the Witch and the Light. And we were getting, we were getting some of this cool, unique content. And I'm like, okay, you've already given us Eberron a few years ago. And then we're getting all this cool content. And the library is growing pretty well. We're getting all this unique stuff we can now use in our homebrew. And then suddenly Spelljammer gets all this play before Dark Sun does. And I have a fundamental problem with that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Dark Sun, because I think the concept of Dark Sun is really awesome. I think also in today's environment, whether you want, political, moral, whatever you want to say,
whatever your moral compass is.
Yeah, whatever your moral compass is.
Okay, I'm gonna catch hell for this, and I'm ashamed to admit it. What is Dark Sun?
Okay, see, Brian, watch me solve this problem. Watch this. Beautiful. Okay, so now that we got rid of the fucking, are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding me?
That was like, so, okay, before we go into,
I couldn't help myself.
Fuck you, dude.
Hey, Baldrick, fuck you.
I told you I was ashamed to admit it. What is Dark Sun? I must have missed it, or I've been sleeping for the past.
Simplest terms, and then I want to get Brian's input on this. In the simplest terms, it was the very first anti-hero introduction to the play of the game. In other words, if we finally had gotten some content that said, you know what, fuck being a hero, because what if you live in a world that there's no clear lines of heroics? What if just survival and existing?
Curse of Strahd?
No, Curse of Strahd had a moral compass, right? This is like
little Mad Maxy.
Do I kill these 12 slaves or trade these 10 to get enough water so my village will live long enough so that I'll have enough children to sell back to the slave market?
Is this WotC or?
Yeah, it was TSR.
How the fuck have I not heard of this?
It was TSR.
It was TSR. So
you obviously had a lot of room under your rock, Brian.
I guess so.
That's where I think.
Dick. All right. Well, now I'm intrigued. So discuss.
Well, I just think that in today's environment and landscape, something like Dark Sun isn't going like Pete. Again, if WotC is interested in sales and numbers, then that might not be flying off the shelves, just because of the topic of, especially of slavery and all this other stuff. But I personally think this is at least in my opinion, 5th edition has given us a lot of different. It's laid the foundation for a lot of different games and genres, right?
Oh yeah.
There's Star Wars 5th edition. You can take Star Wars 5th edition and you can make it as happy jolly as you'd like, or you can make it really dark. It's up to you. That's the thing. Same thing like Call of Cthulhu. Brian and we spoke about Call of Cthulhu, and we spoke about Lovecraftian lore and how the lore is great, but the dude's an asshole. That's just Lovecraft was.
Well, let's be clear about Mr. Lovecraft.
He was a
misogynistic, racist asshole.
Yes.
Yeah. If there was an asshole prime, it's his face is right next to him. It's true though, because he was like the worst person on the face of the planet when it comes to that.
Contrary to Tolkien, I see them as kind of two sides of the same coin.
I think,
the same coin being the genre and the literary aspect of fantasy.
Look, we can always take into perspective the ecosystem that they evolved in.
Yeah.
Right. And if you look at the history of pre-World War I and World War I and how the industrialized complex and watching young men die by the hundreds of thousands, you come out the other end of that and you become what, post pre-war Tolkien, and then Tolkien as he ages into the 50s and 60s of modern interpretation versus the stoic, relenting, fervent zealot of hate and misogyny and racism that was Lovecraft.
Yep.
The two things I draw from those two folks is the fact that they all made their choices.
Yeah. Exactly. They
remember those tangents?
Yeah. Oh, I know, but but to a certain degree,
worth
to going back to Dark Sun and Spelljammer.
So let me ask you a question.
You know,
What is so why Dark Sun to me sounds like another theme, a thematic element.
So
it's very thematic.
It's like
so why
like
do you
Forgotten
need
Realms,
okay.
Dark Sun, Dragonlance, Spelljammer,
right.
all these little pockets. And like with Spelljammer, this is my thing. I used to use Spelljammer as a way for my players to transport themselves to a different planet. Yeah.
Star Frontiers.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that I only use Spelljammer for an in-between. So think of it like if I had a campaign, a mini campaign, a traveling campaign. So traveling between planets, I would use Spelljammer.
Yeah.
That's how I used to incorporate it. Now I am psychotic because what I normally do is that if I'm going to play a different edition, you know, my players can roll characters, but that character in, let's say, 3.5 is a variant using kind of multiverse theory of their 5th edition character. And if they're playing a different system, that's in another stretch of the multiverse. You know, that's like 4-5 dimensions deep. Like I that's how I run things. So literally every little thing we do is connected by, you know, by some sort of string, you know. It's not string theory, obviously, but
but I know exactly what you're saying because I have the same view. I started writing a book. This was many years ago, and the theme of this was the core of this was the very same thing, that everything is connected, multiverse.
Yes.
You know, everything is connected, and there's one point where everything comes together, which is in Spelljammer. It is the Rock of Brawl, I guess, where, you know, you can go there and it's like this weird, you know, there could be a fighter from Waterdeep, and then there could be a freaking alien from, you know, whatever, and they're sitting at the bar together type of thing. You know, it's like where all realities come together. But I know, not to ramble, I know where you're going with that. That kind of theme, you
know. But with the new Spelljammer coming out, I think what it's going to be is that it's going to introduce it's what I believe it's introducing Spelljammer to folks who have never played Spelljammer and reintroducing that, just like, you know, they remade Top Gun, or the sequel to Top Gun. It's basically providing an avenue for people who haven't seen the original or haven't seen it in a while or whatever it may be. I think this is kind of what they're doing with that. It's a bit of a, you know, it's a sequel and it serves as a revitalization. I personally, I'm kind of like I'm excited, but, right? If it was a quotation, it was like, I'm excited, but I don't want to invest too much because I don't want to feel disappointed. My thing in life, and this is going to sound really pessimistic, is that when I come into any type of art form, whether it's movies, TV shows, books, anything of that nature, this happened to me with Dune. When I saw the film, I came at it with a very low expectation, so that if they did really well, it would exceed my expectation. If not, then I didn't lose anything. And that's kind of how I'm approaching Spelljammer. So take that with a grain of salt. I'm just coming at this with very low expectations, so that if it does blow me out the water, awesome. If not, then it's okay.
Yeah, but I have no expectations.
Yeah,
none. So I think I'm going to be surprised. But I mean, it's just thematic content is all it is. Yeah,
I mean, and the thing is, it's like, so Call of the Netherdeep that just came out from, you know, the world of Matt Mercer, Wildmount. I still have the original right over there. Have the original Tal'Dorei campaign.
Oh my God! Can you believe how much that first print is going for right now? That's crazy, right?
Yes, and
I've got that. You want to know how much of a fucking moron I am? How much of an idiot?
Do we have enough time?
When I first met, what'd you say?
Do we have enough time?
I don't know. Let me go dig up my copy of Dark Sun.
Oh my god, that was a good comeback. I like
When
that.
I met Matt Mercer at C2E2 the first time, which led into my work at Critical Role. I had with me a dice box, a wooden dice box that I was really partial to, and I had my player's handbook, and I had him sign both. And I didn't, because believe it or not, I was still familiarizing myself with Critical Role, and I don't know why.
Look, Barry got a profile. She got a pick.
Congratulations, Sharon. Finally. So you're not the question mark, the question mark, Mrs. Anonymous. I did not have the foresight to buy a fucking copy of Taldore while I was there to have him sign.
Wow.
How dumb is that?
That's pretty stupid.
So I've got his signature in my player's handbook and in my dice box, but not on my Taldore.
I wish I would have bought 2 copies. Obviously, one to keep and one to sell.
Mm-hmm.
I would have. I mean, there's one part of me who's like, man, if I ever met Matt Mercer, I'd have him sign this copy and then just keep it like untouched. But then the other part of me is like,
I don't play with the player's handbook, the one he signed. I don't fucking use that. Are you kidding me?
It's funny. If I had something signed by Abraham Lincoln, I'd still use it. I am not a fanboy. I'm not one of those folks. It's like, if I was having a cup of coffee with Matt, we were talking shit about how crappy players can be sometimes. I'd gush over that. I would definitely gush over that.
I was actually gonna say I'd have him sign it and then sell it. Hey man, I gotta buy minis somehow.
So I'm 3 miles down. It sounds like he could craft an endless campaign across all realms using Spelljammer to bounce between them outside of TPK, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, totally. And that's I think that's what Brian was talking about. And that's kind of what I was talking about, where it's like, I want to hop from Forgotten Realms to Wildmount or to that realm or Dragonlands. It's the perfect bridge. You're right. It's the perfect bridge to facilitate that without just saying, oh, you dimension door through the astral plane and get sucked, blah, blah, blah. And now
it's like travel, right? And traveling in a campaign.
Yeah.
Well,
what'd you say?
It's a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
you find a mystical orb that takes you to wherever the fuck you want to go.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but that could be really cool, is to have your group like end up in, on this asteroid city and be like, what the fuck is this? Okay, we've teleported and we've gone through dimensions, but this is strange because there's a guy over there with a bug head and some kind of strange looking crossbow that doesn't actually have arms or a string. Did
I just hear you right?
But
that a fantasy player that might have just killed a purple worm thinks a dude with a bug head and a crossbow is strange? You lost me.
No, I'm not saying
one.
Crossbow. I'm saying a rifle, a plasma rifle.
Pew,
Technology would arguably still be foreign to a traditional group of D&D characters.
That's the one thing I do like about Spelljammer. The one thing they did very, very well is the common thread throughout all these realms that you guys are discussing is still magic.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Magic is the forever thread. So
yes.
The reality is the love and passion for either your narrative player character or for the players at your table, because magic is a persistent theme throughout all the realms of existence. No matter how bad you fuck something up or make redundancy in kind of contextual frameworks, magic is always going to save it. Magic will always save it.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. See, this reminds me of I've mentioned it a bunch of times, my favorite game canon of all time. Shitty mechanics, but yeah, exactly. Kind of. Shadowrun. Modern world, technology, internet, but magic comes back. I see this as kind of, the flip side where it's magic, but now you introduce technology. How would you treat, like blaster rifles or ships or light speed? Is that Would you explain that as it's still based in magic, or would you explain it as it is technology and it is new to the world? Obviously, the rules will be,
So I'm very fortunate in the sense that recently we ran a short campaign for season 1 of a series called The Descendants. And this was the destruction of Toril. And a gateway opened up, and there's some mystery behind the gateway. And the gateway brought everybody into the realm of Terran. And the realm of Terran was 1920s Earth. So you had D&D in kind of, but 1920s Earth, where suddenly you were commingling rapid industrialization with magic and creating this environment where a Model T Ford with a magic gem imbued into the engine was allowing it to fly.
Okay.
So,
that's pretty cool.
So once again,
I like this idea too. Magic weakens tech and vice versa. They just, they
exactly.
Can't, yeah.
And at the core of that, at the core of all that is the idea that we always have about steampunk.
Yeah.
And the steampunk theme, regardless of where you put it in the timeline. So the one thing I love about Spelljammer is they didn't nerf or mitigate the whole magic thing. They allowed magic and tech to compete. And I really, that was my main thing that I loved about Spelljammer. Everything else is redundancy for me, but I mean, I did like how they at least curated it that way.
Yeah. Plus, you bring back psionics. I know they touched a little bit. They've touched a little bit on it in 5e with a couple of those character classes, but you could certainly take that further. The more I think about it, the more we're discussing this, I think the more excited I am for Spelljammer, and I'm getting some ideas for even my campaigns. So I'm gonna say that the needle has now moved to excited. So it's 2 against 1. So now I'm gonna have to take you out of the stream, Jason. I'm sorry.
So to that point, right? When I fell in love with 5e 8 years ago, right? Because I wasn't a real fan of Pathfinder because I just didn't like a 600-page rule book. I just didn't like it. It felt clunky.
You didn't want to have to read 600 pages of text?
Well, not only that, I wasn't a fan of a disorganized 600-page rule book.
Yeah.
It was never organized in such a way to either help the player, the DM, or whatever the user might be from their perspective, right? So, from that point, it was just I fell in love with 5e because they went to a core rule system, and because that core rule system was so stable, so narrative, so thematic, and so interpretive, homebrew became a lot easier for me. So I started writing Dark Sun. I started building Spelljammer concepts. I'm trying to bring Star Frontiers back. I started writing riffs, going back to riffs and pulling in a lot of the content within riffs.
Yeah.
So the one liberating factor I had with 5e is that DC system that they designed and the way it supports the narrative process. Playing Eberron, Spelljammer, contemporary D&D interpretive, game or something else, it's become a lot easier for framework-driven creators like me.
True.
There's a reason why I can run 10 games. And the reason I can run 10 games is the 5e core and the way I write at the framework level. I could run if I had to, I could run 25 games. It's not that hard for me, so without that, I couldn't do that in second edition. Second edition, there's just no way I could be able to pull that off. So I do love the idea that, bringing Spelljammer back and the idea of thematics and using the theme of Spelljammer on top of the 5e core set. I love that idea. I do love it. It just doesn't feel very creative. It just feels like we have this.
Okay, but to your point, I'm going to play devil's advocate. To your point of an earlier conversation that we had, that you and I had.
The little devil down there in the left-hand corner of my screen.
Him. That guy. To your point, from a conversation we had a few days ago, you completely threw my train of thought off.
with my old man voice. I did that on.
No, because you had said
deflection.
You had because you had mentioned that 5e to you, or maybe it was you, Brian. It was one of you guys. This is weird. I don't remember. Anyway, we were talking about 5e, and we were talking about is 6 coming out? 6e.
Oh,
we were talking about.
Yeah, we talked about it too from a GURPS perspective.
And it's like,
and
why?
I think you had a separate conversation with
right?
Brian,
Yeah, like why does that have to happen? Especially because it's going to piss a ton of people off because of the amount of money that people have invested in 5e. Why does that have to happen? 5e can just be a continual tweaking or adding more content and more narrative and this and that, and maybe even, and again, the homebrew library that is out there, those are aspects of the rules that can be added or taken away to change the core rules to suit you. But I think just rewriting the rule system just for the sake of, I mean, I know it's, I'm not naive. I mean, obviously it'd be a huge fucking, money grab.
Yeah, but
like, hey, you can buy another 50 fucking books. I hope that they don't go that route.
Really quick on that point, Brian, what was your perspective on the WotC purchase of D&D Beyond, and where does your brain think now that we've got Spelljammer, kind of where does all this go now? What are your thoughts?
They're not. I don't think. So they're setting themselves up for in a really good position. It cost $146.3 million. That's what
I
they
think
bought
that's
it
how much
for.
I've spent on minis last year.
Probably, and just Warhammer minis, let alone. No,
just one Warhammer mini.
Yeah, just one. Games Workshop appreciates your purchase.
Yeah, hey, whatever.
Don't even get me started on those fuckers.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have our topic for next week. Did you happen? I don't want to interrupt, but did you happen to see Jason and I's conversation about it the last 2 weeks?
I did not.
Okay, all right, then go.
I have
continue.
a 6-month-old, so sleep and all that.
Whatever, dude. Yeah, get your priorities in line.
I know. I'll tell my daughter will just look at me and just I don't know. Anyway, I don't from like a complete like financial background.
Oh, Jim's here.
What's going on, Jim? From a financial background, I don't know if Hasbro ponied up the money. I doubt it because I think D&D. It's Epic Jim, my man.
Right?
My bearded bro.
I know. You just can't help smile when you talk to him. Can't. He's just
Our beards are gonna join together like the Illithid one day.
Right.
God, I hope not.
Beard flares.
I kind of like you.
Thanks, I appreciate that. No, but I think they had the cash. They had the cash on hand. Obviously, they made enough revenue from 2020, close to $1 billion in revenue. They're able to do it, right?
Where most of that came from, right?
I don't even want to know.
Magic.
That is
MTG, baby.
Really? Because I thought.
Yep.
Yeah. So
I
gotta
thought
remember
D&D...
in the Hasbro realm, WotC exists as a subsidiary to Hasbro.
Yeah. I know that, and then But
within WotC, Magic was a bigger.
It always is.
Bigger,
every year, year for year, it's always the
I thought that Dungeons and Dragons itself made the most. They made a huge amount of revenue throughout 2020.
To that point, the COVID revenue stream shifted a great deal to D&D. But the reality is now that things are opening up a little bit more organized and post-COVID activities are happening,
for sure,
the stream is starting to, that revenue stream is starting to shift already because stores are reopening. They're having their events and their competitions. And
so the $893 million, I saw that on their annual report for 2020 because I'm the dude who will go and look at someone's annual report.
Oh, we're the same way.
Yeah.
2021 was over $1 billion.
Yeah. So that already tells you, okay, regardless, they had the cash to buy D&D Beyond. I think that they're going to start setting themselves up to buy Roll20, to buy all these other types of apps and programs to basically have one centralized contingent where now they can control, okay, if you buy a book, because everyone's like, oh, if we buy a book, there's going to be a digital copy. Cool.
Dude, we talked
cool.
about this, all of this and more on the past 2 episodes.
Yeah. Then we're all thinking the same way because, okay, you buy a player's handbook or you buy Spelljammer, let's say for X amount of dollars, and now you'll have a digital copy. Okay, that's fine. That's cool. But this is going to set up for everything else in the future, whether they go 5th edition or 6th edition or not. I think personally, they're going to probably be okay. Like they'll be okay, and they'll keep it, relatively fine to just keep it 5th edition because now they're coming out with Dragonlance. They're coming out with the Dragonlance battle game, which is essentially what was it? The Dragonlance battle game is like that. What was that like aerial combat thing that they had? They had like another.
Oh, it was
battle.
It was dragons in flight combat, dragon riders.
Yeah,
right?
It was dragon riders, and they had it was weird. It was different. Because I looked at it and said, why would I spend $30 on 5 minis? But I mean, that's what I'm paying. If you buy a blind box, that's how much it costs now. $20-$30, which again, it's a I don't judge.
Just as an aside, Spelljammer would be a perfect opportunity to roll out a buy the physical copy, get a discount on the digital, or vice versa.
Or you know what? If you want to up, it's $50 normally. If you want to charge $60, $70
for both,
and now I have a QR code where I can.
There's a bunch of ways they could do it. Yeah.
That's fine.
And it's funny because we've and I'm sorry, I don't mean to speak over you, but I'm gonna.
That's fine.
We talked about a lot of aspects of this, but I think the number one, even though it is a very superficial aspect, I think that is the number one beef of any D&D player or DM. If you ask them what they want to see, I think this is it. Give me both versions for a fair price.
The average dungeon master is spending, I think, up to $10,000 on average for minis books, which I think that number is very low because you have to consider, for me at least, I consider minis. I don't paint. I'm not a great painter. I also don't have a lot of time to paint between my day job, producing and creating content for the Bearded Nerd, not only for socials, but products to sell, Patreon, my wife and my daughter, which that's my priority. So all that, kind of staggers. I don't have time to paint minis. Are you kidding me? I'd rather pay someone to paint my minis because they're going to do a better job than I'm going to do.
I just finished one. It's the first mini I've painted in 6 months. I just finished one, and it's not even a D&D mini. It's Marvel United.
I know, it's so cool.
Really
I saw the Instagram post on that. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah,
I just got these Warhammer minis.
Nice. I'm gonna do a proper post tomorrow and post some pictures of that. But
yeah, you got to, man. I got these for 50 cents a piece.
Nice.
Are they old school?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they look a little thick.
Oh, they're thick boys.
And when an elf is thick, when you have an elf that's thick, it's old school.
Oh hell yeah! I appreciate it. No, but anyway, no, I don't know. I think I'm intrigued to see where this is going.
Yeah, likewise.
And I really feel like it can go in a very positive notion, or you could either become games workshops and basically start to become like them, or not. And yes, Epic Jim, I know I need to work on speed paints. I should get them, but the thing is, it's I'm ooga booga.
Hey Chav, I backed Skinny Mini's last Kickstarter. I missed the first one. I backed the second one, and I'm eagerly waiting for it because I have
not been able to. Yes, storage. I do like skinny minis for the storage. I don't have any personally. I wish I don't even know when the Kickstarter was, because
Well, this last one was.
Yeah, not wrong.
What's the matter?
So,
you got a problem
here's
paying
the thing.
$70 for 120 millimeter
Chad
mini?
brings up a really good point about lessons that don't get learned. And this is what
Yes.
pisses me off about WotC and all the other kind of like gaming community that's now monetized at the corporate level. When Games Workshop came out with that decision on the licensing for the uniquely independently creative videos that were really going on at the time and really doing a really good job of, here's the thing. When your creative community does a better job at curating your shit and then you punish them for it, you are eventually going to go bankrupt.
Yes,
You are
indeed.
going to fail. You're going to realize there's a network of 3D printers out there and a collage of creators that are like, hey, GW, there you go, buddy.
I'm not going to say who, but a very, very, very close friend of mine has printed their own Age of Sigmar-esque and their own Warhammer like 40K and Warhammer fan, all that stuff.
Hey, I've got a ton of that. I've got a ton of that shit sitting in boxes, old, like some of it's 30, 40 years old. I bet it's actually worth something.
So lesson learned, what GW should have done is said, hey, for a subscription of $29.99 a month, you could have access to the entire 3D library of GW.
Yep.
And instead of a trickle of people buying, you would have had a river of people buying, realizing.
So can I say two things? Can I say two things really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
So first, when you said a river of people, it reminded me the line from Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah.
I am poor because I am a river to my people. That's how Games Workshop should think. But I will say this, as a cultural historiographer, having that training, Games Workshop is an English company, correct?
Yes.
Culturally, it's gonna be like this because we've done it this way for X amount of years, and we won't change until we absolutely necessary. It's absolutely necessary. That is
but okay, out of the box.
That's their company culture, though. So they're not. I'm not surprised that this has happened because they're doing that, right?
Yeah.
Like if Wizards or whoever's listening, to this show, whenever, do that. What you said, Jason, is brilliant. Like, tell people, hey, here for $30 of a monthly subscription, here is all the STLs from the player's from the monster manual, from that.
Games Workshop. It's a very simple summation of what happened at Games Workshop. They got fucking greedy.
So I will.
They got fucking greedy. They went from metal miniatures to plastic molded miniatures, which is exponentially cheaper to produce. Correct. And they upped their prices by 4 times. It was an expensive game way the fuck back when. Right. Now it is prohibitively so. It's ridiculous.
I would say that Workshop's strategy over the last 10 years has been remake the rules so that people can buy smaller armies, but we're going to up the price of those smaller armies.
And I think they're in what?
So that basically, so at face value, you're like, oh great, I'll save money. No, you're not going to.
No, because I just went up.
And it's funny because
there's nothing funny about expensive shit, Brian.
I love a game that is so detailed that it's like, okay, here's my army and this is this equipment list and blah, blah, blah. But when you create a game that is that you can literally not play if your mini does not match your fucking stat block, fuck you, man.
So I'm going to introduce something. The Game of Thrones, the Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones by Common, I think it's Common Games or whatever. Themon. There you go. Thank you. Buy those. If you want a crap ton of minis, I think they're like $35 for like.
It's about depending on the set, it's anywhere from $25 to $35 for a box of all likewise. Those are great for if you need Town's Guards. Boom, you got a box of Town's Guards. And to Jim's point, perfect for speed painting. Yeah, absolutely. The one problem with those, the bases are not 1 inch. So if you have status rings, You got to cut them off the bases. Yeah.
That's from the line. That's
If you use status rings and you like them on the base, you got to cut the bases off and put them on, on new bases.
Me and my buddy TK, we used to drink from the Kool-Aid fountain that was Workshops. I had 12 armies. He had like 10 armies.
Holy.
And they sat up on shelves. We sent them to Southeast Asia to a private company that would paint them for you and then send them back. Because I hate painting so much that it's not cathartic to even think about painting.
Yeah, same here.
Like I will literally put fingers down my throat and make myself gag on my own vomit before I experiment with painting. Don't love it, don't like it, don't want to do it.
I don't mind painting like terrain pieces, right? Because it's kind of like, all right, it's a piece of rock, like meh, not too, but a mini, hell no.
No, like I said, I have never played Warhammer 40K. I tried once with my buddies, my D&D buddies, and they were not into it. They hated it. Okay, they hated it. So I've never actually played. I still collected the figures because I love the canon so much and I love the figures so much. But there was a point at which I was like, you know what? I'm done with this because I'm tired of spending this amount of money on this shit. Fuck those guys.
Well, I mean, the Kool-Aid's really fun because the overall rule sets are pretty interesting. You had all these unique armies, right? And this unique content. You could build what your vision was and play it on a table. And for the next 8 hours, you and your friend or a stranger are just beating the shit out of each other with this really unique either fantasy or 40K environment. So it was, the Kool-Aid was fun. It tasted good. It was a lot of fun. But then you begin to realize that the formula of the rule set, and this will always be an ongoing problem, the idea of balance, right? How do you create a balanced reality of rule sets that make games fun? And what happened with me with fantasy and 40K just wasn't fun anymore. It felt like work. So I stopped playing, sold off all my armies and did something else. But I will say this, because our schism of D&D has shifted heavily into the online arena, and because I cannot stand using Roll20 or any of those other two-dimensional shit boards, I am a fervent user of Tailspire and will always be. Yeah. And with their announcement recently with Hero Forge, that is a significant game changer. They are, well, I shouldn't say recently. About 6 months ago, they announced a partnership with Hero Forge, and then they rolled out beta Hero Forge this week. You can now go to Hero Forge, build a digital mini, and then create it in Tailspire. So you have unlimited abilities now to create whatever you want in Tailspire.
Well, and that's awesome. That's what's going on with Arcana. So like the new AR platform by Mirrorscape, which had them on the podcast too. Like they have now partnerships with Reaper, with Dwarven Forge, with Hero Forge, with all. That's where I think it's going.
Dwarven Forge. They're as bad as that fucking company back east that makes like the $10,000 tables. I mean, look, if you want to look at poor people. Yeah, Wormwood. If you want to look at poor people and shit down their throat with these, I want a dice box that's $180. Fuck you.
Do you know how much? You know how much fucking Wormwood shit I have in this house?
I'd go buy balsa wood and glue it together for $1.95 to hold my Rick and Morty dice.
God damn it! It's a wooden box to hold my dice. I'm not put it in an old cigar box. You sons of! I'll use the shoebox from my Florsheim's. You bastards.
That's what I do. I just use the cigar box.
And I do my old man tangent. My old man tangent is create price points that create community. Look at your communities, value them, and come up with ways that companies can make money to keep going, but also utilize that community in such a way to broaden the vision of what these games are trying to bring to everybody. And Spelljammer gets close.
I have mixed feelings about Dwarven Forge also. We've Adam and I had a whole topic when we did the show together about 3D terrain and is it improving or ruining the experience, yada yada yada. Dwarven Forge, in my opinion, their product is awesome. Yeah, that's right, you were. Their product is awesome. Okay, there's two problems with it. It's expensive as fuck. and they can't goddamn keep it in stock. Even if I want to buy it, I can't. But you're
So
right.
it's almost like on purpose
point-
they create something really cool, then they don't make sure you can't buy it. So
Exactly.
they can up the price.
But it is cost prohibitive. See, to me, 3D terrain should be modular so that you can use it for basically any scenario. All right. That's why it's in pieces and it fits together. And their use of magnets instead of clipping shit together is brilliant.
Yeah,
But
4D really
to
fell
fucking
short on their
accommodate
modulation.
every scenario, you've got to spend thousands of dollars on terrain. It's ridiculous. Again, it's ridiculous.
I fell in love with their cavern expression of their product line. So I bought.
I've got some of their
I
stuff
bought
and I use
about-
it.
I bought about $1,000 worth of their cavern stuff. Some like when they were in their infancy, when they were just like in their infancy.
I remember seeing a documentation on Netflix on Dwarven Forge.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's awesome. I still buy it to a degree, but I'm very picky about which pieces I buy.
Oh, I don't waste my money on their shit.
I think it's great. And again, especially for stuff for my homebrew campaign that I am writing, that I will buy.
Yeah.
I'm
in the middle.
Here's the thing.
I kind of am too. I love them and I hate them because again, it's like, okay, this is awesome, but you want me to spend $600 for one fucking room for that applies to 20% of my scenarios?
So,
it's ridiculous.
I have
this goes full circle to your point, Jason, and then I'll shut up so you can talk, Brian. This goes full circle to your point about respecting your community and working with them, which is why neither you or I own our own multi-million-dollar company because
we have morals.
Bingo.
Yeah, we have morals. We're not willing to, sacrifice our morality at the great altar of capitalism, and for whatever reason, I don't know why, and I'd love to get the bearded on this because when I think about the capitalistic approach to a very creative community that spans generations of existence, you look at Spelljammer, Dark Sun, you can look at Darkmoor, the recent licensing clash between the Hickmans in regards to their agreements that they had pre-COVID, then the post-COVID realities of those licensing agreements and the purchase of D&D Beyond, the WotC vision versus the Hasbro vision. All of this is playing out in the sphere of digital progression. Digital progression is going to reshape your vision every single 30 days. Mm-hmm. It'll eventually reshape it every 2 weeks. It'll eventually reshape it on a daily basis to the point where you're like, there are 192 million people that want to play this game digitally. But yet the only digital platform we have available that's a codified platform doesn't actually exist.
Mm-hmm.
There's not like a universal platform out there that people could plug themselves into and in 5 minutes play that game.
The Oasis.
From a D&D perspective.
The Oasis.
Yes, it's the Oasis, yeah. My thing is this. So I don't necessarily I don't disagree with what you're saying. I would personally not call it necessarily capitalism because capitalism, social, whatever, it still has, there's elements of greed to it. I think what we're seeing is greed because capitalism in nature, and again, this is my having come from a communist country, like, man, my people in Cuba don't know anything about D&D because the state controls it. The state's not going to say, "Hey, play this game called Dungeons and Dragons."
Wait, so the state is the dungeon master?
Creative game where you can practice all these free thinking thoughts. Yeah, no, I got you.
Exactly. Yeah, no. What's a thought? No, but
yeah,
yeah.
A thought is a vacuum.
Exactly. But I just think that it's greed, right? It's we're running into the greed that comes into it because companies like MCDM, I like Matt Colville, I like what he does, and he's been very upfront and honest saying, hey, this is why it's going to cost this much because we pay a lot of money for good artists and we pay a lot of money for this because we don't want to give a shitty product. And I appreciate that about him. He's honest and upfront, and he talks about He talks about that. Now, D&D is sold at Walmart. It's sold at Target. And again, it has gone from they have ridden the wave of mainstream to grab money. Now, that's on them. If that's what they want to do, that's fine. They're also a publicly shared company. So their shareholders are making the decisions, and Hasbro's shareholders are making this, all that. Those shareholders are making the decisions.
Yep.
So really, it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm listening to the consumer. Bullshit. Any company who is publicly traded will listen to their shareholders, because that is how it goes. And their job as a company is to provide a product for their consumer and their clients, or rather their consumers, and to give money to their shareholders, to give them the money that they have invested.
Absolutely. But I may be old school in this thinking, but I have always felt that there is an intangible, longer term outlook that you can take. And instead of saying, like Games Workshop, I'll pick on them again, let's charge out the fucking ass for this shit because it'll get us all this money.
They need to switch their mentality.
If you think what Jason said, there is a subscription model. There is, in today's world, the microtransactions, they could fuck us all, death by 1,000 cuts, and we'd be happy about it, right?
Yes.
Tell me to spend $30 on one 28 millimeter mini, and I'll go tell you to fuck yourself. Charge me 99 cents every week for X times 10, and I'll be happy to do it. There are ways to make money.
They have switched their mentality. They have switched their mentality of, instead of focusing on the consumer first, which again, Matt Colville has done. Yeah. And I think there's the difference when you become a private company, like the Bearded Nerd. It is a private media company. I'm here to serve the people by giving a product and give, the advice, tools, tips, tricks. That's one aspect of it, but to provide products that people are actually going to enjoy using in their games. And it's going to be private because I don't want anyone interfering and telling me what to do.
Oh, I actually have RPG&Co set for an IPO on Monday.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got 435 billion backing so far from VC, my opening share price is going to be just under Tesla.
So in a week, I should look for you on the pink trades.
Yes, please do. Yeah.
So should I twist my mustache?
The following week, you could look for me to declare bankruptcy and skedaddle with all your fucking investment money.
Should I twist my mustache and wear my monocle
exactly
now or later?
So this whole conversation is interesting because it takes us back to the idea of Spelljammer. Is Spelljammer a very thoughtful, reinvented, purposely built community content because you now have a collision of old school role-playing games and newer playing games?
Could be.
Is this a process of them getting together and saying, how can we introduce some OSR while still uplifting the image of the idea of the 5e core set and rehash, some relatively popular genre? And I know why they didn't do Dark Suns, and to Bearded point that there are dark overtones to it.
Yeah.
And we escape dark overtones in our fantasy life, and we don't want to bring our real life with us. And I completely agree with that from a mental health perspective. But I think the main reason why they don't do it is because the majority of the folks that play Dark Sun are first and second edition folks that hate WotC.
Well, hold on. Table the Dark Sun thing, because I've got a hard stop in about 2 minutes. But finish your converse point to Spelljammer. Is it?
I think it's
Is it a thoughtful approach, or what's your or?
I think it's a good beginning. Was the only thing I don't know from a product development perspective, was this something in the pipe over an extended period of time and only got uplifted due to some of the social fallout of the WotC purchase of D&D Beyond? Or is this a long vision product goal they've been focusing on to start embracing the community in like little bits of Hansel and Gretel like approaches to kind of give us some old school Captain Courageous shit with the idea that 5e is going to continue to uplift itself by utilizing old school representation.
I gotta agree with Jim. I think even though I'm excited for it, I'm still nervous about it again, because I kind of feel like this is, let's see how much content we can get out over the next year, 2, 3 years.
And I'm wondering too, to Fungin Quest's point, money grabs have to have purpose. Now, it's an interesting money grab if you have to recoup your losses in purchasing a $143 million software company, which is really all they did. They bought a software company.
Yep.
Essentially what they did. So I get that. So now they're saying to themselves, now that we have this new enterprise digital platform that we don't really have a vision for yet, 6th edition is now off the table. So with 6th edition being off the table, now I can do Spelljammer, Dragonlance, Riders of Pern. I could start, the Wheel of Time, the Shannara books, Terry Brooks's stuff. There is the one thing they miss out on. Well, I shouldn't say this. I think the one thing they avoid, like everybody who's deflecting a really good core rule system that's as creative as 5e is, they're beginning to come to terms with the reality that they've created a core rule system that anyone can write their own themes to.
Correct.
So how do you monetize themes when other people can write it for free?
And that's what we talked about last week. Give me a subscription model where I pay X amount a month or X amount a year, and now I'm licensed. Yeah, we're not going to rehash that because we already talked about it. So on that note, this was actually a really, really good conversation. Brian, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'd love to come on future episodes and hang out.
Oh my God, yes, absolutely. We are.
If we can, Brian, I will reach out to Emmasaurus. I want to get Emmasaurus out here next week. So
yeah, that would be,
I will hit her up. She's an amazing
awesome
person.
Okay.
Her journey and her story is amazing. And I think her, and at some point we'll get Barry Bot on here as well.
Great.
New player journey, new DM journey. I think those are conversations that need to be had. And this,
I think that's a great idea.
Just favorited you to my toolbox, Bearded Nerd. So
I appreciate that.
You're now in my toolboxes.
Yeah, Brian, you will definitely be on more, because I've always loved talking to you also, and I think it's a really good conversation. I apologize if I was stepping on you a little bit in terms of
that's how I grew up.
I think the three of us are the same. It's like
Well, and I love how I get to play the part of I like being able to bash companies because I've been in corporate for so long and retired from it. That deep-seated understanding of why they're doing things is clear to me. And that's why I like to just go tell those folks to go fuck themselves.
My whole career. We've talked about
it really
this.
doesn't bother me.
No. I'm not on their payroll as of yet.
This is why Bearded Nerd Media, RPG&Co, and all these small morality content-driven platforms that look at the holistic effect that they're having on a community, and they drive their sense of purpose from a community that actually embraces the love and passion of the game. Corporations don't do that, and they never will. They never will. And I love the fact that we're getting a Spelljammer remake, but to both your point, I do agree, we'll have to wait and see.
And on that note, I think that is the perfect ending. So WotC, Games Workshop, everybody, take note of what we just said. Once again, Brian, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. Jason, as always, thank you for your input. Thank you. Doctor. We will see you next week. Same time, same bat channel.
Brian, you got to linger, Bearded Nerd, linger for a minute. After we
I got you.
Yeah.
All right. It is Thursday yet, and enjoy Critical Role in 15 minutes ago. Ciao.